All right, week 11 of our podcast, and we are now through the first two rounds of the NCAA tournament. March Madness, yep. Indeed. There were some pretty good upsets in the first couple of rounds, which now is to be expected, I guess. And today we have a guest to help share and his feelings on what happened over these last 2 weeks or these last two rounds. Jared, thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. It's fun to be here.
Yeah, we are so excited. Even though you're decked out in your KU gear this morning.
My apologies.
Hey,
yes.
I had to wear my stuff knowing, I'm not a fair weather fan. I'm going to cheer for him either way. So.
Right. Well, that's good. I admire that about you. And don't worry, we'll get into how they performed this week. But why don't you tell us a little bit about you so the audience knows a little bit about you if they don't already?
Yeah, I'm Jared Phillips. I work for Lionheart Children's Academy. We're actually getting ready to celebrate our 10-year anniversary this year in August, which is super exciting. I get to plan and train all of our Trailblazer teachers and plan all the activities for that. And that's our elementary program, if you're unaware of that. And so, I just get to have a ton of fun. Love to coach at LC basketball and anything that has to do with kids, really. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
So,
And you're really good at it. So Jared has two boys, Micah and Liam. He coached the second grade division with Micah. And then he coached the fourth grade division with Liam. And you were in the championship game of the fourth grade division, right?
Yeah, I was.
Right?
Yeah,
yep.
It was fun.
So excellent coaching for sure.
Thank you.
So we know that he can tie in everything that we're talking about college basketball-wise into what he experienced this season.
And he also was a ref at the LC pretty much every Saturday,
That's
at least, 2 games.
Yeah.
So he has seen both sides of the coins, both a coach, a ref, and also a parent. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Can I just start by saying
Go Tar Heels?
I apologize in advance for any of the North Carolina comments you're going to hear today. Although I will say, and if we have time, we'll get into it. Thursday is a big matchup.
Yep.
So
North Carolina versus Alabama.
Yep. It's gosh, I'm so sad for you next week. But hey, we'll just stick with this week and we'll get going with this. So what do you want to lead off with today?
Yeah. Well, first of all, how's your bracket?
It could be better. It could be better. But we were just talking earlier. I've still got 7 of the grade 8 left, so I still have points on the table.
Yeah.
So I missed a few. How about you?
Yeah, same here. I have 7 of the 8 left.
Yeah.
9 of 16. So we'll see if those upsets keep rolling. But it's been fun.
So who is a team that can be upset right now as we look at the bracket with the Sweet 16? I was shocked that, honestly, I think I mentioned last podcast that I questioned why is Clemson in this.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And here they are.
I know, right?
The Sweet 16.
I know. That's crazy.
And I'll eat my words as well, because as I went back and looked at Clemson won against Duke and North Carolina in the ACC. We cannot sleep on them at all.
No. I'm going to take a different tact and say, Wisconsin, what did you do to me? I believed. I drank the Kool-Aid on Wisconsin, and man, not even out of the first round.
I'm sorry, but the Big Ten does not have a very good track record.
I'm telling you. And even more disappointing, everyone knows I'm an SEC guy through and through, right? SEC teams, and we are terrible this year in the tournament. Outside of Bama, it's the last stat I saw, we were 1-5, I think. And it just hasn't gone well for the SEC, so I can't really throw too much shade at the Big Ten this year.
I don't know. They have a longer track record.
Yeah.
Over and over again on Thursday and Friday, whether it was women's basketball and men's basketball, I heard over and over again from coaches from these smaller, non-Power 5 divisions, sticking up for their conferences and their teams, talking about, there's a lot of SEC teams or Power 5 teams that are in the tournament, and why not give some of these smaller conferences that have a better record as far as their team go? Why not give them a chance to make it in?
Yeah.
And when you look at Yale, when you look at some of these other teams that won, I guess props for them to sticking up for their team, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they're not in the Sweet 16.
Right.
None of them are in the Sweet 16, right?
Yeah, and I think
Creighton, they're not a Power 5. The Zags are not a Power 5, but yet still, I mean, they're all
both of those
San Diego
schools
State.
they have history, right,
Yeah.
of being good teams already. It's San Diego State last year. I mean, you've got teams that aren't necessarily in the Power 5 that are still going, but they have a long history of being good basketball programs.
Yeah, I think it comes down to those non-Power 5 schools. They don't get the competition throughout the entire year that the rest of the field does.
Right.
And those schools that are used to the tournament, it doesn't back them down like the Gonzaga and things like that. But you still see over history, you see a struggle from those non-Power 5 schools to really consistently show up and dominate in the sport. So
yeah. Well, that kind of brings us to our props and flops segment of winning with the podcast, and we'll talk about the girls. I watched a lot of girls basketball.
Yeah.
For the first time, I'm a female, right, and played basketball, but this is the first year that I have just. I probably have watched just as much women's basketball as I have men's basketball for the first time.
Yeah.
And there has been a lot of media around the women's game. I will tell you, the game I watched last night, the men have some learning to do with free throw shooting because I don't think either team.
The Houston and Texas A&M game?
Houston and Texas A&M I watched before that, but then Iowa State women and Stanford women, both teams were shooting free throws well. It wasn't lopsided, and I think the men have some learning to do on that because that's the easiest shot in the game.
So I'll ask you, because you mentioned it, do you think that is not just you? Do you think that the country is starting to pay more attention?
100%. Yeah. And we can go ahead and jump into this. I think Caitlin Clark is a big reason for that.
Yeah.
With just how well she's done as a basketball player. I don't know why I have this. I can't get there. I can't get to being a Caitlin Clark fan, but yet I can respect all that she does. I know that you are. Right?
I love her.
So she is one of our props.
Yes, she is. And what I love about Caitlin Clark is, I mean, aside from the fact she's a phenomenal talent, this is someone who is living in the spotlight 24/7 right now. And you just don't hear these outrageous accusations against her. There's a lot of haters out there of her, and
I might be one.
I
might be one.
Jealousy is a thing, right? I'm not saying
I'm not jealous. I'm just okay. Media, we get it. She's a good player.
Yeah,
Let's move on.
Yeah, right. But she has earned that. I mean, with her play, she is earning the right to be all over ESPN all the time, and I look at our league and the kids that we coach, and you want them to have good role models, right? And you almost panic every time you have a player that these kids are looking up to because okay, first of all, this is an idol. It's gone over the top, but then you just know that next media story is going to be so-and-so gets arrested for X or so-and-so, throws a temper tantrum or whatever it is. And so you just worry about that. And go ahead.
And right on that, you see top players, right? Men and women, when they start to get the limelight, the media is going to point out their flaws. They're going to catch them doing things that we humanly do, right?
Right.
And I think Caitlin gets caught in that quite a bit. One of the things that you catch her doing a lot is complaining about calls. You're up by 30 points in your game, and you're whining to the ref about a ticky-tack call that you're gonna score later anyway. But I think it was really cool. There's a video Katrina shared with us, and we saw. And Caitlin's dad from the stands is telling her to stop one time.
Stop, John.
Stop. Just play. Let your, and so I think all of us can fall into that, right? But what I really love about watching Caitlin play is that she's not just a scorer. She makes sure that her teammates have opportunities to score. And it's really easy as a top-notch player to get ball hog. And some of the shots she takes, I'm like, ugh. But she does time and time again get into the double-digit assist range. So,
Well, I mean, I compare her to Luka. If you watch the Mavericks play, I mean, the guy
That's another person I don't like.
Well, Luca to me is way over the top on complaining. Like he's in the whiner category to me, and it makes it hard for me to watch. I don't see Caitlin in that same.
No, I don't. I don't either.
But Luca takes. I mean, he takes a lot of shots, but he dishes the ball around quite a bit too. And so in that way, I think they're similar. But man, I could not be more impressed with how she's handled herself.
Yeah, what I like about your point, Todd, is you have Caitlin, who is in the spotlight, who has got some amazing records, right? And she's probably 21, 22, maybe, she'll be a first round WNBA pick,
right?
This coming up season. And so, I mean, she's an adult, right? By age standards. And yet you have her dad in the stands telling her, hey, stop it. Like, it was a very innocent, just scenario of, a player, a daughter, John at the ref, and the dad is in the stands saying, hey, stop, just play, just play, right?
Yeah.
And I think that as we, continue to talk about youth sports, winning with the home team, I think that Caitlin's dad is an excellent example of just how parents can continue, to just guide their sons or their daughters in the right way, as far as, hey, just shut your mouth and play.
Right.
Just shut your mouth and play.
Yeah.
Like, just prove to the next play that you're good. And I love it. So, Caitlin Clark's dad, I guess Mr. Clark, good job.
Yeah.
Good job for that.
Absolutely.
You guys are both dads, right? You've got two that are currently playing basketball. And you have 5 who, have played, different types of sports. Has there been a scenario where you guys, whether you've been on the baseball field or the basketball field, where you've just said, hey, stop it. Like, let's go. Like, how do you do that as a parent?
Yeah, 100% that has been the case with me. And I'll back up and say, good for him for being present, first of all.
Yeah.
Because you have parents that just won't be there. And for him at the collegiate level to still be close enough where he can say, hey, stop it, that just tells me that she has a strong support system at home. And so a lot of her behavior, you can kind of bank on the positive way because she's got that strong support system. And, yes, I tried to stay out of when I'm not coaching my kids. I try to stay out of it. But when I see them arguing a strike call at the plate, no, that doesn't happen. And I'm real quick. I try not to call them out in the moment.
Yeah.
Good for him. Maybe I should have. So good for her dad. But yeah, I have walked down and I stay away from the dugout. But I have walked down to the dugout and said, never ever do that again. That is exactly the opposite of what we're here for.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as a parent, as a coach, Liam, 10 years old, just started to really figure out like, okay, there's a difference between the calls. Like when the ref blows the whistle, there's something like it could have gone differently.
Right.
And so just reminding him and players, in general, like, hey, let me talk to the refs. Let me as the coach ask them questions. You just keep playing.
Right.
And that's a reminder in practice. That's a reminder on the sideline regularly is like, hey, you just play. Like that's what you're here for is to play the game.
Yeah,
and I think you see that on Caitlin Clark's dad's face. Like, hey, you're the player. And I remember, I can't remember where I heard this, but just remembering the roles that we have when we're a parent, right? When we're the parent in the stands. I think early podcasts, I think it was with the Duns, just talking about like talking to your kids about what kind of parent do you want me to be in the stands. I thought that was excellent, right?
Yeah.
And so like, how do we hold ourselves in the stands? What's the coach's role? And how does that relationship go? And the player's role is specifically to play the game.
Yeah.
And just follow the rules. And the rule keepers are the refs.
Yeah.
So.
And this is an excellent segue for you. You mentioned the coach's role.
Yeah.
And that's going to get to one of our flops. But when you were coaching this year, I always knew you specifically, if you had an issue with the ref, you may point something out. Hey, did he not do this? Did I see this correctly? As soon as the ref gave you an answer, right, wrong, or indifferent, you moved on.
Yeah.
And I always appreciated that about you because there's a lot of coaches who don't, and we saw many examples of that this week.
There's more examples of coach that complain about calls than there is coaches who just accept it and move on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think there's a line between, showing your players that you're willing to stick up for them and figure out why. Because, right, as a coach, you want to be able to coach your players into a way that they can make that move or defend in a way that goes along with the ref, right? We have to adjust to the ref's call.
Right.
I remember as a player too, like remembering that's the hardest part is figuring out where the refs are going to call. But as a coach, that's your job to figure out, okay, hey, why did you call it that way? What was it about that play that made that a foul or a travel? Like, tell me where you're at so I can communicate to my players, because I want to be able to like pull them aside, help them to see like, hey, if you'll just do it this way, or hey, take this step this way. That's your job as a coach. It's not complaining. And most refs, even as a ref, like if a coach is going to ask me like, hey, why did you call that way? I'm more than happy. I love talking about like what I saw. And so just remembering that, referees want that dialogue because they want you to understand where they're coming from too.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a fine line. Like you don't want to be a pushover as a coach and all the calls are going against you because you just accept everything.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, I've often thought that the hardest job is in football, the official that stands on the sideline and just gets it in the ear the entire game. He's not even making the calls. He just happens to be the one standing closest to the coach. And that is, that's a tough job.
Yeah. There's this concept called the circle of criticism and the circle of affirmation. And when applied to coaching, it simply states that, if a referee makes a call and the coach jumps all over him, essentially you are giving your players and the fans in the stand, the okay to continue that criticism, right?
Right.
And I'm not for it. Like I'm 100% like this is a black and white issue for me.
Yeah.
Like I understand sticking up for your players, but you can stick up for your players by asking a question and then addressing it.
Yeah.
And so the opposite of that is a circle of affirmation, right? Like, I mean, you're not necessarily affirming a ref's call, right? By, saying, oh, hey, good call, ref. Thank you for calling traveling. You're not doing that. But, essentially, you look at some of these teams that have great coaches, and Kim Mulkey is not one of them, by the way. But you look at the Don Staley's and those like that.
Yeah.
And even the Hubert Davises, go Tar Heels. Yes, they are very passionate coaches, but they're passionate in a way where, like, if a call is made, if they have a question, they'll answer it, and then they move on.
Yeah.
Like, you got to move on. And anytime that you're spending energy, negative energy on questioning a call or, we'll talk about Kentucky, right? And just their,
collapse
on the free throw line, getting a rebound, right? But anytime you just spend so much energy, negative energy, that could have been used in a positive way.
Yeah.
Like, when if a whistle is blown and a call is made against you, right? In a player's mind, they already know, okay, I made a bad call. And for a coach to further that, that argument to the ref, you're only putting them in the same mindset. Whereas if it was a positive, all right, guys, next play, let's go. Just move on. Move on to the next play.
Yeah.
I think sports psychology teaches that. And although I'm not an expert in that, I can definitely see how that goes 100% all the way.
Right.
And I think it's also a matter of respect. It's a respect for a referee. And then you're also teaching the players and the parents or the spectators to respect the ref's call as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a matter of respect.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's a way to quantify it. I would love to see if there's already a study that's been done. But coaching, a few decades back versus coaching now, and is this a societal thing, or is this something that's always been that way with coaches?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't speak to that. I feel like, as I'm getting older and watching more basketball, it is, getting
common.
Worse and
right.
more
That's
common.
How I feel too. But
and we've seen it some in our league. Where these kids are watching basketball games and watching Luka and his poor example of whining. And then they continue. They whine. They have a bad attitude, right?
Yeah.
And as a coach, you can either correct that instantly, like I've seen you do over and over again, Jared, or you can just choose to move on, like push that player to the next play. Like, okay, go make a good play on defense and get the ball back. Like, let's not worry about that one play. Right.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to, affirming their role, right? The referee has a role in the game, like we talked about. And if our players don't see us, if the parents, the fans in the stands, they don't see a coach affirming that role and respecting that role, they're not going to either. They have a hard enough time doing it, even when the coach is affirming that role.
Yeah.
But we also, as a coach, right? You mentioned Kim Mulkey. Like, our demeanor pulls over onto our players, right? And it really does even affect the fan base, right? You see a shift,
absolutely,
when attitudes change, and
we call that fan base LSU.
Yeah,
sorry.
Right now.
Well, we'll just jump into our next flop. Our next flop is really LSU.
Yeah,
women's basketball.
Yes.
We can talk about Angel Reese. We can talk about Kim Mulkey. I have no, and again, I think I ended with Kim Mulkey on the last podcast. I'm sure she's a great X's and O's coach.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, she is where she is today because, she is. But Todd, you read, a Washington Post about how there was drama surrounding Kim Mulkey.
Yeah.
She was going to sue the Washington Post.
Right. And this is all about a story that I guess hasn't been released yet, that she caught wind that the Post was going to do a story on her that would be damaging towards her, something negative. And, she goes into a press conference and preemptively says, I'm going to sue the Post if this comes out, and it's not true about me. And, I've dealt with the media, in my recent past with law enforcement a lot. Was a public information officer at one time. Yes, the media can be like
that's their job. That's their job
to a point.
Sadly, it is.
Point, and they cross the line sometimes, and so I feel a little bit of her pain on that. I question, the timing and the way that she went about it. I saw somebody posted, well, if nobody was going to read that article, they certainly are now, So, Kim, it does, like you said, an amazing job with the girls' X's and O's. I'm not a fan. That's okay. It's just an opinion.
Yeah.
But that was kind of over the top, I thought. And then, her player waving bye to the opposing player that fouled out. Like, those are things that she defends. Or those kinds of things she defends, just like she did when she said, I wish she would have picked on, my bigger player. Yeah. Those are the things that I just look at and I just kind of shake my head because it's not what I would want my girl in that environment.
And as a parent, those videos, like, there's no escaping those things coming up, these press conferences, things like that. Like, you're scrolling through and it pops up, like, your sound's on, your kid's hearing it. And just remembering as a parent, like, these moments are times to point out, like, hey, that's not how you act.
Yeah.
I remember several different conversations that I've had with Liam and even Micah with this. Like, this team is like setting me up to show my kids what not to do, right?
Right, absolutely.
But as a parent, taking advantage of that, right? Not just being like,
great
point. or
Great
joining
point.
joining the bandwagon, but being like, hey, right or wrong, like, if she's upset about something, there's a way to handle it.
Yeah.
There's these people that go to school for a long time called lawyers that get to take care of that kind of stuff behind doors.
Yeah.
That story didn't even need to be released, but you're working on this negative energy that they constantly work on, and helping them see, like, hey kids, like, this is not how you act. Like, you have conversations with people, you go to them, and you don't broadcast it for the nation to see.
I mean, and there's no telling what the background is there, and we don't know that. But to your point earlier, do we go down and tell our kids not to act a certain way? this is a stop down moment for me when I'm watching TV and I see a player waving bye to the opposing player. When
Middle Tennessee.
And this is a stop down moment for me because I bring my kiddo over and I'm like, see this? Never do that. Never ever do that.
Absolutely. Rewind. Let's look at that.
Yeah.
And you know, let's give Kim the benefit of the doubt. Like maybe after the game was over in the locker room, she finds out what happened and maybe there's a conversation that's had. I don't know. But I'm just saying that those are the moments like you're talking about where we have an opportunity.
Well, and we talk about these Power 5 schools and then the mid-major schools. Like Middle Tennessee did the game before have some remarks to say about LSU as well.
Yeah.
Which you know, but that's building off of we're just allowing this negative stuff to keep rolling.
Yeah.
And if somebody would just put a stop to it,
yeah,
we'd be in a better place.
If that's the way that we want to go as a society, then let's stop talking about sportsmanship and holding it up as a virtue because
that's true.
That's just not
well. And I mean, honestly, you know, whether I'm just looking at wrong media, you know, I think that you spoke to just, you know, what kind of environment are you creating? What kind of culture are you creating for your team? And as I was listening to an Ole Miss press conference with their coach, you know, who played LSU, one of the things that she talked about was, you know, how LSU just has a culture of, you know, of drama, and they play into that, and that is their game, you know, everything down from, you know, just the, you know. I'm sorry. Like, honestly, I like to watch LSU's games because I want to see what Kim Mulkey is wearing. You know, I like
crazy outfits.
So that's one of the things that I like. You know, like I like to watch a coach's vibe on the sideline, and I like Kim Mulkey's vibe as far as what she's wearing. But that's drama too. You know, like I watch it because I want to see what she's wearing. It's not basketball related, right?
Yeah.
And so, as Ole Miss, as their coach was talking, she just said, "Yeah, we just got caught up in the drama, right?" Yeah. And, you know,
it took her 15 minutes to get her players out of the drama.
Exactly. Yeah. And she said, we just fell to it. You know, we forgot, you know, that's what we talked about. And so, Jared, as a coach, you know, culture plays a big role, you know, as a coach. What are some things that you want to speak into your teams as far as culture goes? Yeah.
So from the get-go, you know, we talk about encouraging one another. Like this isn't a comment that I've made myself, but Corey Dugan, I coach baseball with him, and one of the things is like the other team is here to compete against you. You don't need to be competing against your own teammates too. And so being a team, being a player that is always encouraging no matter what happens. If we miss a shot, we're encouraging them to look to the next shot.
Yeah.
When we make a good shot, we're all there to cheer with them, right? And so creating that culture of family, right? On the court, you're a family.
Yeah.
And we don't tear each other down. We lift each other up. Again, just that positive outlook on referees. We're being respectful to them. We're talking. We're asking questions, but we're going about it at the right way. And then for the other team, like, you know, being happy for them whenever they make a good play. Right? Sometimes they just made a good play. We did everything we could. And not hanging our heads. And so just, you know, it's one of those cliche comments, but keep your head up. Like, keep playing because the next play is going to come. And so, I think that's where you start is just the foundation of just being positive, being encouraging.
And I think that plays into our next prop that we'll talk about. Again, I watched a lot of women's basketball. Gino, UConn played Jackson State, which is an HBCU. UConn, obviously, I think that they were number one, and Jackson State was 16.
Yeah.
Was UConn number one? I'm not sure. It's Gino.
A high seed.
It's Gino, right?
Yeah,
so I mean, it was definitely up there. And in his post-game press conference, you know, he spoke specifically to just the great job that Tamika Reed, the coach of Jackson State, did. And he talked about how, you know, these lesser conferences, you know, she's done a great job and that she's won her conference year after year after year. And gave her compliment after compliment. And then when it was her turn, she talked about, I mean, she gave, you know, reference to Gino's, you know, compliments, but then she spoke to the other HBCUs, the coaches, and just talked about, like, you know, when they do a good job, we do a good job. And the we, you know, meant that all of the HBCUs. And so props to both of those coaches in, in just complimenting one another. I think it's a form of respect, right? It's the highest form of respect to give somebody a compliment that you're competing against, right? And I think that, when you look at youth sports, there are some good coaches that do that respect each other, but then there are a lot that are really just looking out for themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, Jared, as I know that you've ref games and you've also, coached 2 teams.
Yeah.
What is the difference in a coach that respects you and that you can feel that, and then a coach that, that they could care less to shake your hand or not?
Yeah, I think, we all get wrapped up in that, right? As a coach, we either have a tough interaction and tend to kind of go the human way of like, you know what, if that's gonna be how it is, I'm gonna keep my distance. I get wrapped up in that sometimes, and having to regroup and just say like, okay, today is a new day, and I'm gonna treat this person like it's the first time that I'm gonna give them another shot.
Yeah.
And sometimes, most of the time, people are gonna surprise you if you are just the genuine, kind, walk up, go out of your way to shake their hand, tell them good luck before the game starts, because you know that the energy is gonna be flowing. The energy is gonna be flowing, and good or bad, like there could be comments that are made that just spur up that anxious stuff in you. But I try to be really diligent in before the game, or that the game before I play them, especially in the LC. Like if they play right after me, like I'm going up to their coaches and being like, hey, good luck today. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Like just trying to be that person that it's not about the game. It's about who they are. And they have a hard job, right? Remembering that we're both in the same boat.
Yeah.
We're coaching 4th grade boys. We're coaching 2nd graders.
Yeah.
And it's about the kids, right? And even as it gets older, like I helped coach my dad's varsity basketball team right out of college, and watching my dad in how he could go talk to a coach that I knew because we had talked about it at practice or afterwards, like that he really struggled with and how they handled themselves on the court. He would go and have a 5-minute conversation with them during warm-ups. Yeah. And that was for me, like that example of like, hey, it's not about the game at that point. It's about being a good person and being approachable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I do think it's a matter of respect, right? And really, as a coach, you saw from both of these coaches, Gino and then Coach Reed, they were both very secure in who they were and in their programs, right? I mean, you have Gino, who is successful beyond success. And then you have Tamika, which, Gino said, he said, I wish schools, would think outside the boxes as far as like, who they hire for their next head coach, right? And you saw in Tamika, she's secure in who she is. And I think that when you're secure in who you are as a coach and what you do, that gives you the confidence, that gives you the kindness to approach the other coach and say, listen, like you said, we're on the same team. Like we are trying to develop kids in such a way that not only betters the game, but betters them as individuals. And that's the role of youth sports.
Yeah. And I think, to me, Gino's talking about how they need to give these smaller school coaches an opportunity to coach at a higher level, but you couldn't hear that at all in Tamika's statement.
She didn't want it. She didn't want it.
She's not after the fame. She's not after the hype.
Yeah.
Like she's after bringing up these girls, and that's why she's successful. Right? That's why she's successful, because she has the right mentality. Yeah. I'm here to build these girls up.
Exactly.
And these girls are just as important as these girls that are getting the media.
That is so true. That is so true. And no matter if you are, the number 2 seed in the 4th grade tournament, or no matter if you've not won a game in the 4th grade tournament, every single kid has the same amount of value in God's eyes. And that's 100% loved, fully accepted and worth coaching.
Absolutely.
And that's why I loved her response.
Yeah. So. And, in the LC, you see improvement in all the kids from the bottom up. And being able to, as a coach, I loved being able to go up to a coach that, we started the season this year and obliterated a team. And it wasn't because we did it on, like, it was just our shots were falling and theirs weren't.
Yeah.
But that team ended up becoming the 3rd ranked team in our league. They worked hard. They improved, and I made a point to go to their coaches and be like, wow, like y'all, this was fun to watch.
Yeah.
Like y'all did incredible. We didn't get to play them again, but I got to see parts of their games against other teams and really pointing out like, hey, y'all did a really good job this year of improving. And even from our, you think about the wristbands, black wristband or red wristband, I saw several teams as a ref, as a coach, that those kids worked hard, and those coaches needed to hear like, hey, they got better.
Yeah.
They got better, and you were part of that.
Yeah. That's good. Well, what about another prop? What about the who was it? What band?
Idaho.
Idaho.
Man,
Are they the Fighting Potatoes?
Probably
not.
I think they're the Vandals.
The Vandals?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Who stole the potatoes? Okay, I'll stop.
Just going to move on from that. No, man, that was such a great story because you have Yale, and we talked about Yale last week and the way that they made it into the tournament, on the buzzer beater. So they go in, and their band can't be there, and Idaho finds out that Yale is going to be out there, and they're like, we'll learn their fight song, and we'll go support them.
That's so awesome.
Man, that is great.
I've never heard of anything like that before.
Who knows? I don't know if it's ever happened before, but that was the first time I've heard of it too, and I just thought, kudos to that university.
Yeah.
Because there's obviously, it's not as big a travel for Idaho, but there's still some costs incurred.
Absolutely.
And
they got
energy
to get out
and
of class.
time. Yeah, right. But man, that university just deserves some props today for what they did there.
Yeah. My curiosity in this, and if anybody knows the answer to this, please let us know. But they got shirts real fast.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Yale overnighted them just to hear the fact that they were going to do that. And I think that's pretty cool to see that. Right. And you look at that with how an environment sets up a team for success, right?
Yeah.
You don't think about the band making an impact, but clearly they do.
Yeah.
Clearly that presence makes an impact because universities are willing to pay the money to get them there.
Yeah.
Obviously, Yale's not necessarily looking at that all the time, and that's not their priority, and I get that. But to see a community of band people, right, saying like, "Hey, this is important. We understand what this gives." It's really neat.
I know how big of a long shot Yale was, but I was rooting for them to go deep so I could see the Yale band and the Idaho band form a super band, and
awesome.
just keep supporting all the way through. But that was a great story. I love that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Well, Jared, what happened to Kansas?
Oh,
they flopped. That was a flop.
So going into the tournament, there was some. Two of our best players sat out for the Big 12 tournament, and there was hopes that that they would both get to come back. Our big guy, Dickinson, who has been playing basketball for a long time, as everybody likes to point out.
What, 27?
Yeah.
But McCuller was our top scorer, 18 points a game, and he ended up being medically unable to play for the tournament. And so I really, as a fan, I'm going to cheer for them every time. But really the first half that they put on against Gonzaga was incredible.
Yeah.
And they just didn't have the gas.
Yeah.
They really didn't have the gas. It wasn't necessarily that they weren't playing together as a team, which they have at times this year struggled to do that. But they really just didn't have the depth. And Coach Self even admitted to the fact of that they needed to get their younger guys, their bench guys in earlier in the season. And they failed on that. And I give props to that. He doesn't always admit his faults in his coaching side. But he came forward and was like, you know what? My head wasn't in it. Like I was already thinking next year. And that's hard for those players that's their last. That's hard to hear. But he's admitting like, hey, I wasn't there. He could have gone a long time, and you won't see me be a proponent of cheering him on very often. He's not my favorite coach.
Not neither.
I've read his bio, all that stuff. He's not my favorite coach, but for him to admit a fault was like a big tick in the pro column for me.
Well, let's talk about for a second. You said that he didn't invest a lot of time into his bench players.
Yeah.
How important it is to do that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like I think that that is the role of youth sports, not solely, but we have a rule in our league that says that every kid has to play at least half of a quarter, which equates to half of a game. Unless you're in kindergarten and you really have like a booger in your nose and you don't choose not to play that game, right? But how important is it to invest in the players that are not the best, right? Absolutely. Like I even saw that last night for Texas A&M in Houston.
Yep.
When four of the 5 Houston starters fouled out, right? And you've got this kid, this senior, who has shot 4 free throws the entire season. He has to come in and he has to shoot, and they pan to this guy's face, and he is absolutely pale. Like he's got 2 free throw shots with 8.9 seconds to go, right? But how important is it, to invest in the players that are not your all-star players?
Absolutely. It's hard as a coach, right? You want, in practice, you're thinking, okay, I've got to get through these drills, but I've got to make a drill that is able to challenge our good players and keep our lower players going.
Yeah.
And there was times where you just have to look at your higher players and say, hey, we have to do this basic drill because everybody needs it. And it's going to do you good in the long run.
Right.
And so really helping them, especially at this level, at a peewee, at a younger level, like helping them see like going through the basics is important. We're not just looking to play games. Kids show up to the first practice. When are we going to scrimmage? I promise you in the first 2 practices, we are not scrimmaging.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to bounce pass. We're going to work on layups.
Yeah.
We're going to work on dribbling. Like those things, those basic things are free throws. Like those win or lose games, right? And so helping players know that it's not about just throwing the ball up to the hoop, but it's about the basics of it.
Well, and it's amplified at a program like Kansas that has such a strong history of basketball.
Absolutely.
And because I equate it to, at Alabama football, if they lose because they have, 6 starters out this week for various reasons, people are like, well, y'all don't have blue chip recruits waiting in the wings.
Right.
Well, yes, but they got 0 reps with the first team all week, and so it that's a thing. Like the practice is important, and we keep stressing that, to these kids. And it doesn't matter how much talent you have if you're not gelling with the group that you're going to be in there with. If you're not getting the reps, it's not going to translate.
Well, and I think that this also bleeds over into, let's not talk about youth. Let's talk about the high school level, right? Yeah. I mean, there is such thing as a role player.
Absolutely.
And your role player might be, just to be, to help the 5 starters in practice get better. Mm-hmm. Like, for the high school, even I don't necessarily know the junior high, scenario, but for the college as well. Like your role is to make the starting 5 better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in doing so, you're competing for their spot, right? And in doing so, like if you're playing against them, then when you get in, you should go in with confidence that, hey, like I play against the good guys all the time. Yeah. Like what makes me think that I can't play against these other good guys.
But I think it comes down to a mindset piece, right? As a coach, you have to be saying those things. Yeah. You can't just be like, well, you're not starters. And you can't just be coaching your top 5, right? Yeah. You have to be coaching the entire team. Yeah. Because games like Texas A&M and Houston, that opens your eyes to the fact of like, I need 10 guys. Yeah. Like I really need 10 guys at my disposal, 10 girls at my disposal, to step up and play and be ready to shoot it. Now, is it hard to shoot while you're cold off the bench? Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why we talk about, the best 6 man on the team and things like that, because it's actually probably harder to be a bench player and jump in and do well than it is to be a starter and have minutes under your belt.
For sure.
All great points. And I think that what we keep circling around here is we've got what's happening at the college level and we equate it to what's happening at the younger levels. And there is so much influence that I see that coaches have.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
And as we talk through these things, whether it be X's and O's or whether it be, how they relate to their players, that translates no matter what age you're at.
Yep.
You know, we talked about the referees and having conversations with the referees, excuse me, or the players, or even the fans. Like, you know, all of it translates all the way across the board. And that's why I think this podcast is so good.
Yeah.
Yep. For sure. Well, we play each other this week.
Yeah, Thursday is going to be the battle lines are drawn.
Versus Alabama.
Yeah. You feeling strong about that?
No, I'm not. I'm not going to tell you I'm feeling strong. I'm going to be, I am, man, I love Hubert Davis. I love the energy that he brings. You know, he was doing an in-game interview.
He interrupted.
He didn't even let the girl finish her question because it was an X's and O's question, and he immediately cut her off and said, "We cannot talk basketball until we talk about whether or not we're going to join the fight."
Yeah.
And she said, okay.
Let's talk about it.
You know, and then he immediately went back to his bench and said that to his players. Like, we cannot talk about X's and O's until we talk about joining the fight. Yeah. And it was after that they just kind of, you know, snapped into it and gave some passion.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, you know, as a fan that my team's out now, you know, I actually, I probably get to enjoy the tournament even more. So
You like the Tar Heels?
I don't know if I'd go that far, but But like I get.
Do you like Hubert Davis?
I do like Hubert Davis. I'll give you that one.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. He's a great coach. From however I can see him, right?
Yeah.
But he handles himself well on the floor.
Yeah.
But I love, like Katrina said, like I love watching now, like watching the coaches interact, watching how that integrates with their players.
Right.
And now I just get to sit back and be like, okay, you know, I get to cheer for the underdog or I get to cheer for whoever's winning.
Yeah.
Like I just,
Right.
there's no blood pressure. There's no,
Right.
which is sad, right? That I let my body during a KU game gets crazy high. And I know last week Katrina talked about how she secludes herself when UNC's playing. Like we had to, I think we all need to evaluate like, okay, is what do we need to change here, right? Because I'm in the boat of, you know, I do that too. Like I get on the couch and I don't talk, and there's been times where my boys have asked me questions and I'm like, not right now.
Yeah.
I cannot answer your question right now. But to
Ditto.
that fact, like it'll be a great tournament.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, you're right about that. Once you don't have a dog in the fight anymore, it's a lot easier to watch.
Absolutely.
You know, and another point that I'm going to come off of what you said a little bit. You know, we talk about these coaches and how they are with their players, and what you made the point just a minute ago. It's what we can see.
Absolutely.
Right. You don't see the rest of it.
Yeah.
You don't see how Kim Mulkey gets her girls to fight as hard as they do, and they
I'm
love
sure
her.
she's an excellent pep talker.
And I'm just saying, there's probably a whole lot more to Kim Mulkey there than what we see in the media.
Sure.
You know, so you know, we get very limited versions of that. I had the benefit of watching you and many other coaches this season in basketball up close, and just watching you guys and how you responded to your players, how you proactively approach your players. And so I see that and I'm like, man, I wish everyone could see the way that some of these coaches interact with their players, as opposed to if all you had was a camera on you that cut to you every now and then.
There probably were times that my face did not show.
Right.
Yeah.
So as much as, you know, I say I'm not a fan of Kim Mulkey, but let's also give her the a little bit of grace and the benefit of the doubt that
Jesus loves her too.
Well, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes and how she's treating the people around her.
Yeah.
So
okay, so now that you've seen the first two rounds, who is out of the 16 teams that are left, who would you say is an underdog?
Ooh. Oh, that's a good question. Jared?
I think Creighton would be one of those. They got a 3 seed, but again, they don't get the competition through the year that they're just about to roll into.
For sure.
Like they've gotten some pretty low seeds in the first part of the tournament. And so I think you're going to see their true colors, but they're going to have to overcome some tough stuff there. They're probably in my book, except for who just beat Oakland.
Oakland was NC State.
NC State.
Yeah.
Like I think Creighton and NC State. would be.
You still think NC State's the underdog?
Yeah.
They are 11 seed, so we'll see. Todd, what about you? Underdog?
Man, I don't know that you can call them an underdog with such a high seed, but Illinois looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're in the same bracket as UConn out in the East, and so that's a tough task.
I think that alone makes them an underdog.
Yeah, exactly. But just watching them, I don't know that there's a whole lot of people that picked Illinois to go to the Final Four.
Oh, no.
And I think they are playing very strong. So,
but I did pick them for the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I would like to retract my statement that I said last week. I think I said that UNC has one of the easier routes.
Yeah.
What was I thinking?
Right.
What was I thinking?
Yeah, they're about to hit a train.
They are
Thursday.
about to have a good game on Thursday. They are, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Jared, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
sure.
Appreciate it.
You, yeah.
Yep. So this is next week will be the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 that we'll talk about.
Yeah.
I'll try to remind myself this is just a game.
Yes.
It's just a game.
We won't talk.
One of y'all will be
talk
coming
on
out of
Thursday.
the next episode a little bit
Right.
relieved of any stress.
Right. If it's just me.
And one will be
next
crying.
week.
And
Yeah.
well, no, the tears will already be
True.
over. You'll be done.
But yeah.
But like the stress will be gone for one of y'all. The other one's still gonna
Yeah.
have a team in the tournament, and so your blood's probably still gonna
Yeah.
be pumping pretty
Right.
good.
And, rest assured, even if you do get over the loss by the time we shoot the podcast, I will make sure to rub it in as much as possible next week. So
There will be a Bama hat on the table. Is that what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
We'll
Absolutely.
talk about sportsmanship and some other things, and we'll have a good time. So, hey, thanks so much for listening to episode 11 with Winning with the Home Team. I'm Katrina. This is Todd. That's Jared, and we'll see you next week.